Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Additions, deletions, or corrections, changes to the proposed agenda for this evening? Roll call.
President Schneider,
Present.
President Pro Tem Dyke, Councilmember Alec,
Present.
Councilmember Kolka,
Present.
Councilmember Feldman,
Present.
Councilmember Glasser,
Present.
Councilmember Steffler.
Present.
Thank you. Communications, there were none for this meeting. Moving on to consent agenda, the regular meeting minutes for our January 18, 2022 meeting. Any questions, comments?
Just one correction. I was present.
Yes, you were. I apologize.
Yeah.
Further in the minutes, I have some motions
Yeah,
that I
right,
approved.
How'd that happen? Wow.
I just have a slight correction on page 4, Kim. Under council manager comment, Manager Trent wanted to highlight the item is in the manager's report. Maybe just delete is.
Yes. Okay.
Anybody else regarding minutes? Okay. General fund. Major streets, local streets, Parks and Recreation Fund, Downtown Development Authority Fund, Sewer Fund, Water Fund, Equipment Fund, Payroll Register Report, DDA Director's Report. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Report.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Steffler, to approve the consent agenda. Any further or discussion at all regarding consent agenda? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is unanimously approved. Now is the time for public comment for any item that is not on our regular agenda for this evening. Is any public comment?
Comment time for items on the agenda,
Did I say that?
not on the agenda.
Oh, no, thank you. Public comment for any items that are on the agenda for this evening. That's what I should have said. Thank you, Mindy. And there still is no public comment.
Just in case.
just in case, yeah. There's a ghost in that back chair back there. Okay, regular agenda, Village Council 2021 activity report. Looks like we were pretty busy. She got a lot done.
I just had a couple of items for the December meetings. I was not present for those, and I'm not listed as absent.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anybody else? Comments, corrections, discussion?
I just thought one more little typo. On page 23, just a comma's in the wrong spot for June 1st.
For June 1st? Oh, there's not a space between the June and the 1. Is that what you mean?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
It's not the comma that's in the wrong spot, it's the space.
Space. Okay.
Lack of space.
Anything else? Anybody else? Entertain a motion.
Motion that we approve the council activity report and enter into the record, the 2021 activity report for village council to enter into the record as presented.
Second.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Councilmember Alec, to enter the Village Council 2021 activity report into the record. Any further discussion?
We want to include the corrections, Ms.
Oh,
Stefani,
yeah,
correct?
including the corrections that were pointed out, of course.
Okay.
By Councilmember Steffler. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Post same sign. Activity report is unanimously entered into the record. Regular agenda item number 2, employee handbook amendment. This was discussed at our last meeting. Slightly contentious, and there was specific discussion about removing the language at the end of the very last sentence, which is a phrase that stated, unless explicitly authorized by a vote of the Almont Village Council. And there was some sentiment that that phraseology had been taken advantage of and didn't make our policy firm enough. So our clerk is suggesting that we eliminate that phrase from our employee handbook. Discussion?
Well, two things. I don't think it was contentious discussion last time. I think it was deep, thoughtful discussion on an issue with both sides of it. I don't think there was any contention from anybody on that discussion. And secondly, at the clerk's presenting it, but I think that was upon discussion from council, so she's doing it from us, not on her own will. So, just my thoughts.
I was one of the council members that spoke up and said I'd like to have it come up for discussion again, because I don't like that it's a policy that could be used inconsistently and sort of discretionary based on the council's feelings at the moment. I don't necessarily disagree with people getting paid out for a certain amount of their vacation time. I think I indicated before, I feel like that's fairly standard practice amongst most professions. I don't like it being council's decision whether or not an individual can get that payout. So I'm perfectly willing to entertain discussion, and I think it's a good idea to discuss that, whether it's an all or nothing policy or if there's some type of reasonable restriction on this, so that we're not opening ourselves up to a lot of financial impact, but something that's fair as well, because we have union employees, we have non-union employees, and if we went with this, union employees would get payout for vacation time, but not the non-union office staff, correct?
Correct.
Suggestions as to what those restrictions would be.
Sorry, I just want to silence my phone here. I think that we currently have a cap in effect for employees hired after 2013. That it can't roll over more than 1 year of accrued vacation time. I just don't know what the accrual rate is, or if it's different for every employee.
It depends on the years of service. So, obviously the longer you're here, the more vacation you get. I want to say it, and don't quote me, I want to say it goes up to 15 days after 20 years of service. And new hires get 6 days. So it ranges from there.
Is this a cash out of retirement, or is this a cash out at the end of every year?
This is cash out upon giving us notice that they're leaving.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's capped at,
So they can't accrue more than 1 year. So basically, they'll have 2 years on the books technically. If they
but
go to,
technically they can't cash, they can only cash out 30 days and it's only 50% of the salary of those 30 days, correct?
That's the,
that's the six.
yeah.
So we give them sick and vacation payout?
Right, the sick is at the discretion of the village manager.
See, we
And-
should roll that all into, because most companies now go with PTO, and we're playing a weird, flipping, confusing math game here. So we should, and we don't have to make that decision tonight, but we should come up with a round number of days that you can cash out at the end of your career. That's not going to break us, because that's why we put stipulations on this in the first place. And then go with that, not 30 vacation days and then sick time and all the other. It needs to be, I think this whole policy needs to be relooked at and simplified with one specific amount that's semi-fair to the employee, but is protecting the village from paying out $15,000 at some point because somebody's accrued something and we haven't kept track of it. I mean, this is a good start, but one, it's confusing. Two, it's not, like Mindy said, it's not discretionary and it's not absolute. So,
Right, and we're trying to be as close to the union contract for the non-union employees to keep it fair as possible. And they have the sick, vacation, comp, personal. They have all of those. That could be a discussion.
So just a clarifying question.
Sure.
So does sick time accrue on a monthly, weekly?
Pay period
Pay
basis.
period basis? Vacation, does that accrue same way?
Yep.
So it's not just at the start of your, either the fiscal year or the
No.
start of your hire date, you get six days or 10 days or whatever it is?
When you first hire, you accrue for the first year, but you can't take it until you've been here a year.
Okay, so you start and you have no vacation on your first year.
Pretty much. I mean, but it's accruing for the next year.
Take sick days that first year?
Yes.
Okay.
so given these parameters that match the contract, couldn't there just be a scale of payout that is created based on years and days and then they're paid out?
Certainly do that.
Or at least create a scale and let us see what those buyouts look like so we can maybe make adjustments so we know, so we have data what we're making a decision on and how much we're paying out.
Sure.
I mean, I want to be fair to people that have given service, but back before your guys' time, there was a couple of times we crunched some big numbers on some payouts that were like, where the crap did that come from?
Right. And that was mostly from unused sick.
Right.
So-
And this policy was put in place to kind of keep that, but I think it needs
Contained.
some refinement though.
Makes sense.
I'd
Okay.
be interested in seeing a comparison with union employees, office employees, so we can kind of, look at the accrual charts and.
Sure.
and
I don't think we
can
want to
see-
eliminate it fully, but I think we want to be prudent on how we're doing.
Mhm.
So table for this evening.
I guess one
Be
question I
best.
have is, do we have a benchmark or multiple benchmarks of communities roughly our size and what their potential policy is and what they're using?
I know a lot of communities have gone, excuse me, from the individual balances to a PTO.
So
But I
that's
have
simpler.
no idea how they convert, their existing balances into PTO. That would be something we can investigate. Okay.
And we have just so that I understand correctly, this summer we have a union contract coming up, right?
Correct.
It's in April.
It's always a very enjoyable time for the manager.
Looking forward to it.
Yes, I'm sure. All right, so we have a consensus that we're tabling that issue until we pull in additional data to consider, and it makes sense. It is a tough call of, especially in a small community like this, a significant differential between those under a collective bargaining agreement and those who are non-union. And is that the wisest, best course?
Well, it's that fine balance of treating employees the way they should be treated, but also protecting their constituents from
Sure.
getting some kind of major payout.
Right. Yeah. What was it? The police chief? There was something with that one, and that one was like swallowing a cactus.
We dismissed them and handed them 20 grand going, well, I voted no, but we handed them 20 grand going out the door.
That was different.
There was a reason at
Was
that
that-
time, but
Different issue.
Yeah.
yeah. There were other considerations at the time, and then looking back is like, really? Anyhow, okay. So now we hand the floor to our clerk treasurer for second quarter budget amendments.
In your packet is the detail of the second quarter budget amendment recommendations. The memo just goes over the major highlights. For example, in general fund, there was a reduction in revenue because council approved moving the Local Community Stabilization Act from general fund to the DWRF or 498 fund. So there was a decrease in revenue there. And then there was increases in expenses. One was the IT contract, the additional contribution to the park fund for the playground equipment, and then transferring the previous year's LCSA funds from general to the DWRF. And then additional overtime for the police department due to short staff. And then the cost of switching over to the Microsoft email exchange. And, but some of that expense was reduced because we paid less for the drains at large than we had anticipated. The park fund had a decrease in revenue. They did get a PAR plan grant, which I included $5,000 in revenue, and included the additional contributions made by the township and village. However, they increased the DPW labor and equipment costs to help the village combat the cost of DPW working on park matters. And there was an additional cost. They cleared a walking path. They brush chipped the walking path, and there's plans to maintain that going forward. It is east of the wastewater treatment plant on the east side of the river, I believe. Am I? South side of the river. Okay. And then the cost of installing the pavilion lighting, which is offset by the grant, and the cost of the new playground equipment. The stimulus grant fund, that is the ARPA fund that we created and was adopted in Resolution 210701 to accept the ARPA funding, just to keep that separate because we'll have to give detailed explanation as to what we're spending that money on. The DWRF, we got an increase in revenue because of that transfer from general fund. There was significant savings in the sewer fund due to Mark retiring early. Plus, we did not add any additional staff. We thought we might have a supervisor in training or another trainee, and that hasn't happened. So that was a significant savings in that fund. The increase in the maintenance service for the sludge hauling was significant as well. The water fund, we do have that reimbursement in there for the water leak investigation. That hasn't been paid, but it's considered a revenue. And the increase in the replace and repair for the 622 South Main water line break. And then a minor increase in expenses for the equipment fund for the backhoe routine maintenance. It's based on how many hours, and they just reached 500 hours. So they have a 500 hour, 1,000 and 1,500 hour maintenance. So it's hard to gauge when that expense will come up.
Where do they get that? Do they take that down to CAD or wherever it came from?
I want to say Bell, but I don't know if it's Bell equipment that does that. I thought they came actually to the garage. I'm not sure.
I was going to say that because I don't know. I mean, I know TLN and Emily City has done a few emergency repairs,
Mhm.
and they are certified on equipment
Okay.
that
Okay.
I'm sure something could be worked out. And I know he does all the Emily City stuff for the fire department and Attica and that. And I know he gives them a pretty good rate.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it might be something that Brian might want to look into.
And I don't know if that's part of keeping the warranty up. I'm not sure.
Right.
I can follow up.
Any other discussion regarding the budget amendments? Entertain a motion.
Second quarter budget amendments as presented.
I'll support that.
A motion made by President Pro Tem Dyke, supported by Council Member Glasser, to approve the fiscal year 2022 second quarter budget amendments. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Unanimously approved. Now is the time for public comment for non-agenda items. Still no public comment. And open discussion, no. Closed session, no. Manager Trent, anything you would like to bring to council's attention?
Just embellish a little bit on the written report that you found at your table tonight. The Planning Commission will be holding a meeting, assuming that they can get to the meeting on Thursday night. I don't think there'll be an issue with getting on the roads. It might be more of a problem getting out of your driveway. But anyway, the meeting's still scheduled. A quorum of commissioners have indicated that they plan to be here. So kudos to them that by Thursday night, they anticipate they'll be able to be here. There's a public hearing for text amendments for ordinance 193.5 dealing with medical marijuana providers in the industrial district. Assuming that meeting does take place, it would be part of the village council agenda at our next meeting with a public hearing for you folks to consider those text amendments as well. Just wanted to highlight, last week I made a presentation to our Parks Board regarding the opportunity to acquire a vacant piece of property at 605 South Main Street. This is the 2.2 acre parcel that's just south of Creekside Hearth on the south side of the river. And the people that have owned that property for a number of years have been approached by developers and other folks who have had an interest in possibly acquiring it, and they've always been rebuffed. Right now, for whatever reasons, maybe it's that right time of life, and the fact that we're making an inquiry about the village acquiring it for the benefit of improving the overall park access and having an approach off of M53, that the folks are at least willing to talk about it. So that's a plus. because of the timing when you're dealing with the DNR and the Natural Trust Fund for land acquisition, we had to set up a new account and make sure that our recreation plan was valid, which it is. For this last year, it has to be updated after this year, 2022. But one of the requirements going forward, after the Parks Board unanimously said, yes, we would like to recommend that the Village Council and the Township Board help support this effort by resolution, which will be part of your agenda at the next meeting. There's a public hearing that's required in March, not only by the Village Council, but by the Township Board as well, to indicate, to provide that opportunity for the public to have input on this project. And also, the deadline to apply for the grant is April 1st.
Is that the Lagan property?
No, it's the Sherwood Trust property. The east end of this property abuts the park, and on the south side, it does abut the Lagan property. So the Parks Board was very excited about the possibility of acquiring this property, and they have a wealth of ideas on how they can utilize it. So, and I've had the chance to talk to our state senator, talk to state representative office and our congresswoman's staff regarding funding opportunities for road and infrastructure projects. So we're doing our best to try to get queued up and see if we can garner some of those funds to help support our infrastructure goals and needs. And regarding the last item on the written report to you, the proposal that was discussed in closed session was also tentatively rebuffed by the union, and that's part of the mediation process as well. And we're anticipating that a meeting will be scheduled later this month on that issue. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Have anything to bring to council?
Sir.
Wayne?
No, I think it's answered. Snow removal, that's what I was going to talk about, but it looks like it's all here to look over.
No, I'm all good.
We approved $31,000 in May for the Vector truck. Is there any, and I know there was some problems with them reforming the steel and all that. Do we have any kind of update on when that thing might be back in service?
The
Or if it's
last,
worth bringing back into service?
yeah, the last report that Brian shared with us this past week is that it should be done this month.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had issues with COVID and employee staffing and
Oh, I can imagine.
additional work that was found that needed to be done. All those factors have.
I talked to Brian about it a couple of months ago, but when I saw it on the council report and then it registered, it was May. We've been dealing with this since May. Let's keep an eye on that. And I think, and that.
Should be back this month.
That's all
Yeah, actually the budget amendment report reminded me about the American Rescue Act funding. And I just wanted to ask what the process will be for decision-making on how to spend those funds, if that's going to occur during the budget process or separate from that or leading up to it.
I think our intent is to have it segue with the budget process. Our staff has already started meeting to talk about next year's budget and prioritizing different projects that we would be recommending to council for consideration. And hopefully by the time that we have our public hearings and you're ready to adopt the budget, we might have some feedback from our friends in Lansing on possible monies that we can add to ARPA funding and infrastructure needs.
It would be really nice if the timing could align on some of that.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, and just so you're aware, previously council has asked to have more information on the budget ahead of time, kind of going into the budget workshop. It has felt in the past like more of a presentation to council, and a lot of that discussion and decision-making seemed to have taken place before we got to that point. So as these discussions are taking place with staff, if there's a way to just provide updates on how that's going and what's being discussed, that I think is helpful, especially we have new council members that haven't been through the process that many times yet. And for me too, it's always a very eye-opening and interesting experience.
Appreciate that feedback, especially for the new manager who wants to give the information to not only the seasoned council members, but the new kids on the block as well. So thank you.
Where are we at with the trailer with Kingsbrook's water bill? I haven't forgot.
We received, the last payment we received was January 13th of $25,000. So they are making consistent payments at the consistent time. So I'm expecting another check, around the 10th of February. I don't know if he's queued up to be at the first March meeting, because he wanted to come back in March about the penalty waivers, but I haven't had any discussion with him.
I have not talked to him in the last month, but he did email me to let me know that the third payment was in the mail, and it did arrive and it did clear. And so I would anticipate that we'll get that check this next week for number 4, and then Mr. Muir will be present at the March meeting. So.
And the only other one I had, I know Brian had mentioned, and I'm not sure if it was brought up or not at the last meeting, about the cost of the leaf vac was astronomical. If I'm thinking we need to dig into that if we're going to do leaf removal this fall, because of the whole crunch with everybody not having enough help or getting steel or parts but the repairs were more than you paid for it when you purchased it however many years ago.
The budget process is going to say we need a new one.
So I know when he had approached us or brought it up before, it ranged from $60,000 to $100,000. So
last 2 years, he said it's probably going to be between 90 and 110.
Right.
So
if we're going to do leaves again in the fall, I think that's something that in the next month or so, we need to get some arrangement on, because it might take them 4 or 5 months to build it.
Well, I believe the last email we received from the vendor was there's a 140-day lead time. So
That don't take long.
no.
And that's if they keep all the help and if they get all the pieces and parts. And
Brian's working on that. Yeah, Brian's working on the disposal place.
Oh. Mhm. Yeah, that would have to be in place.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
I agree with you.
I wanted to mention I know the budget's coming up, and Kim is going to be coming to our next park meeting, and we're kind of going to be talking about expenses that we anticipate, what just our bare necessities of running the park, and just kind of putting it all in perspective, right, Kim?
Yes.
And then we'll know if we're possibly going to be needing some extra monies and things like that. So we're hoping to get all that before we start the budget process. So we don't play the move the card game all around of budget, pulling monies out of this fund and things like that. So we're hoping it'll be a little bit better than what it was last year with that. So
Yeah, I agree with that, because being on the Parks Board last year for them, it was basically, here's your budget, approve it. It'd be nice to let the Parks Board take their budget and put some requests in, whether they get them or don't get them. But I mean, that way you guys have control over making your budget and working with Kim on the new costs for what the DPW is doing and the new labor stuff on that. But that way you guys can write your budget. I mean, you can follow kind of what's there and,
Yeah, everything.
and
can
ask for
balance.
something at least, you know?
Right, because we do have a lot of
Right.
goals and things that we do want to do with the park. And, you know, I'm not sure if we acquire that land, how that's going to work financially. But there's a couple of barns on there that we could store some things on there, like our hockey, you know, the ice skating rink and things like that. And if we didn't have that, then we were going to want to use some monies to acquire a shed so we could put things in it. So it would be like a win-win if we could somehow find a way to get that, own that you know, be able to take over that property.
Discussed a couple of years ago about purchasing that also. And there was some discussion that there's like flooding issues and high water table content down there. So I think we would want to double check all that before we slap any money down on it.
It
Yeah,
is
we
in the
need to do our Due
floodplain.
diligence, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's smart, Jackie, to do that strategic planning first, because that's the feedback we got from the township, right? Of
Right.
don't come and ask for money without a plan. So
Right,
I
right.
think it's good to get started early in that budgeting process so it can fit into township budget, village budget, so we can decide on what our priorities are,
Right.
especially
Yes.
with extra money.
Yeah, would be helpful. I'm all done.
There was a meeting that took place yesterday. DDA Executive Director, DDA Chairman, our village manager, our clerk, DPW Supervisor, and myself regarding the issue that will never, ever go away, which is clearing the snow from downtown. And I don't think it'll ever be fully resolved because the way that town is constructed, what do you do with all the snow? And so at times it's been privately contracted, and DDA is trying to work with DPW doing at least our public sidewalks. And so that meeting was somewhat contentious. And when I referred to contentious before, I was actually thinking of our employee who wanted her money and wasn't going to get it. So that the meeting was somewhat contentious. However, a rather lengthy, in-depth discussion about how to coordinate DPW and what it's capable of doing, considering the number of employees it has, the priorities that it has, and the methodology by which it would actually do the snow plowing. Complaints from business owners, always. Citizens falling because the snow's piled up. And I think the meeting came up that there's one lady that's made a complaint of slipping and falling for 16 straight years. I didn't know what that was. That was kind of interesting. And also the liability for the village if anyone does fall. So that meeting, I was there for a couple of hours, I think, and you were still talking. So I had to run back and practice law. And there's a lot of back and forth. DPW has its constraints, and DDA, who really prompted all of this, to try to make it happen and address that issue. So I think the DDA feels an obligation to take care of the downtown. It's in its district. And at one point their expenses were capped at $5,000, and then we determined that was hitting our general fund. at much greater expenditures than we had expected. So that cap, that 5,000 cap is no longer there. And at, with all that discussion, which sometimes a little bit heated, Brian's not always the calmest person in the world, but did go into depth and explained the difficulties of dealing with this. And I bring it up, and I presume that policy is going to be shown to council. The initial discussion was doing a contract because DDA had a contract with a private contractor previously. And after talking in depth about this, we're talking about Village of Almont, our DPW department, DDA, which is another essentially governmental unit, that you don't do contracts between bodies within the village, but you can develop a policy. And so that ended up happening, and I was extremely pleased to see the outcome, that despite the difficulties of working out all the issues, the constraints that DPW has, the need and desires of the DDA in taking care of all those obligations, and our business owners who will never fully satisfy, unfortunately, because there's no place to put the snow. And yeah, where do you put the snow? Well, we pile up against light posts, some of which are not stable enough to have the snow piled against them. It was a whole long list of problems. But I give my congratulations to all involved, that the DDA, Kim, Andy Rose is a chairperson, really quite impressive in terms of his addressing the issues which we were hashing out. I put a little bit of legal in there, and worked out a policy on something that's very contentious, always very difficult to deal with. And all agreed, though, that we put a policy in place, and it is the DPW's position, according to the supervisor, that because of the money that the village has invested in the equipment to clear the snow plowing, that he believes that DPW should be doing all of the snow clearing, because he pointed out over the last 10 years how we have improved the equipment that we have. And so the DPW is in a much better position than it was, let's say, 10 years ago or so, to do all of it. And he believed they could do it and do it well, and money would stay within the village rather than some of it going out to a private contractor. And so aside from sidewalks, there's the issue of the parking lots. And it's Brian's opinion that our DPW could be doing all of that. Obviously, we'll see how things work out with that. It's been doing in any event. Part of the DDA's frustration was that the issue had initially been brought up in October, and here it is February, and we still didn't have something in place. But there were holidays, and there was illness and other issues there. It got delayed, but one of the things that Andy Rose was pointing out, that we need to be tackling that issue and knowing exactly where we're going with it much earlier on, because we should have had something in place before now. At least we have something in place now, and it should provide a base from which to operate and go further. So good job by all the people involved, and tackling an important issue for our downtown business owners, residents, citizens, and everybody, try to get everybody working together, DPW, DDA, and the village itself. So I just wanted to call that to everybody's attention. There was some hard work put in, a little blood, sweat, and tears but it worked out. So, anybody want to have any discussion on that topic? Doors open if you do. And we know we have been, every year we have to deal with that, and
it'll be here next winter and the winter after and the winter after.
Yeah.
If it's
Mhm.
not the sidewalks, it's the parking. I mean, and you'll never make everybody happy, but I'm glad to hear everybody's at least communicating. Because I
That's
don't know
part of
who
it.
else gets the calls, but I know after every snow, I've gotten 2 or 3 calls this year. And I'd be the first one to vote to let the businesses do it. Shovel your piece in front.
Well,
mean,
yes, well, one of the things that the policy says, it says near the commencement of the policy as written, is that the village, DPW, and DDA have no legal obligation whatsoever to clean the sidewalks. And there are towns that do not, Emily being one, for example. And some people think it's working out well there, and some people not so much. And it was the conclusion of those at both at a DDA board, because the board meeting approved this closed meeting that took place yesterday, that we believed that it was in the best interest of the downtown, which has obviously had its problems with vacant buildings and retention of business, to provide that benefit to the business owners, to the community. And knowing that we don't have to do it.
Right.
But and so
I want to do as much for business owners as possible, but the time it takes to make the phone call, you could be out shoveling the 40 feet of snow in front of your
Right.
business.
I mean, and the calls I've gotten were, because they do it with the machine, there's a small row. And I get it. I mean, there's certain spots it's crucial because of people going in and out of physical therapy I understand it and it's frustrating, but it's Michigan. And if they go through and get 3/4 of the sidewalk, they have the streets that need to come first. And we've got a major storm coming. If it hits like it says, is the sidewalk in town going to be cleared before businesses? If the streets are done, I would hope,
streets
I think the
come
guys
first.
at DPW do a good job and they do the best they can, but to see them out there with hand shovels, I don't
Well, I think
think
No.
50-year-old men need to be shoveling snow by hand
from Steve's verbal description and the written word we got from Mr. Trent, I've put aside anything I've heard, because it sounds like we've done the one thing that needed to be done, is having an agreed on starting point policy. The only thing I'd ask from all parties is, when something does come up, to communicate with each other before communicating it full wide out.
Right. Yeah. A simple phone call might fix
Keep communication on the policy, so if something doesn't work out right the first time, we can make adjustments and keep growing it positively.
sounds like,
But-
that's what it sounds like it's heading in that
But it
direction.
sounds
So
like it's heading in that direction.
That was one of the points of the meeting, that communication obviously had broken down, and that shouldn't happen. And there was, seems like a meeting of the minds that won't happen again.
And it's gonna be an effort from all sides. It's gonna be an effort from all sides.
Certainly.
Right.
That's absolutely true. And the roads are the priority. That there was some contention at the DDA board meeting about, well, the sidewalks should be cleaned once at 9:00. That's it. And if it keeps on snowing, for instance, we had a 5-inch snowfall, and so DPW came back out because the snow kept falling and it wasn't safe. And so that was part of that whole discussion. I argued that looking at the contract, and rather the snow on the ground, if it was for the benefit of the downtown safety of the businesses and citizens, et cetera, that's what should be looked at. So the DPW is very clear in its priorities that the roads absolutely come first. And, well, yeah, I'm business owners perhaps. Will you carry me in my office when I collapse or shoveling snow? Because probably can't lift the snow shovel.
I get it. I mean, I get it. It's tough on everybody.
Yeah,
but
oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah. that's
if they
it's
make
an
a
argument.
pass, if you're saying they're only doing once a day, I mean, they're in trouble on this one. It's gonna start snowing at 4 a.m. and that's supposed to quit till 7. I mean, it might, if it comes down hard, it might need to be done 3 times. You
And the
know, I
thing-
mean, do they need to do it at 9 o'clock at night? No, most of the businesses are closed and,
There-
I mean,
the focus right now is to do it between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. Before the business is open.
and I think not having the paperwork or a policy, I mean, maybe that's all been worked on and, you know, so it's not going off an ordinance or going off of he said, she said. I mean, it's a positive that everybody sat and talked instead of,
Yeah, well, I mean, we want to enhance downtown as much as possible with all the problems that we've had. I think that's part of the desire. And plus the village has purchased a lot of equipment and specifically planned for and to be used for cleaning the sidewalks. You wanted to say something, Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to let the council know that the policy and the winter maintenance that we discussed yesterday has gone out to all the businesses that were open today that I could get into. Otherwise, they received an email with a letter and with both the policy and the winter maintenance. So the businesses are aware of the procedures and what's going to take place.
And that there's some obligation on the business owner's part as well, that we can't do everything. So they would have some responsibility as well. So, but a tough issue, and I could say I was pleased that at least it got addressed, and obviously council can take it up at some point if it wants to bar the DDA and the DPW from doing that work. So, but it's an issue. At least it's being addressed, and we'll see where it goes from here. I tried talking to God about whether we'd have sufficient global warming so there wouldn't be any snow next winter. I didn't get an answer. So,
It's your sign
Right.
tomorrow.
right.
we've
Okay.
been lucky this year.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I mean,
Yeah.
the last few years, we've been lucky.
Yes, yeah. Fortunately, it's been very little snow. So I think we're adjourned. We are adjourned. Good night, everybody. Have a pleasant.